All right.
Hey, everybody. Happy Friday. It's Kathy Klotz-Guest, and this is not my normal time for the show, but I am so excited because I know people filter in and you will watch this stuff later. We've got a bunch of people who will watch the video after the fact. So I am so excited today because we have a special guest, Jay Sukow, and I got to tell you, first let me tell you about Jay, because he doesn't need an introduction, but he's going to get one. Everybody deserves it. Everybody deserves it. So Jay is the founder of Today Improv. He is in LA and he teaches. He teaches at Second City. He teaches at the West Side Theater. My gosh, he is an amazing voice in improv today. And I first got to see Jay online. Well, we both were at Second City in LA, but not at the same time. But I have to say, Jay had so many amazing things to say a few years ago, when what we're seeing in Hollywood now erupted in the improv community. It erupted all over the place. And Jay was one of those voices that I was like, oh my gosh, he's saying something that I think is amazing that everybody needs to hear all over the place. So that's how I came to know about Jay. And I was like, how did I not know about him before? So Jay, welcome to the show.
Oh, Kathy, thanks for having me as your guest. I'm really excited. I'm excited to talk to you live because, we've known each other through Facebook, and I feel like we've shared a lot of similar thoughts or articles or posts. So I think we're on that same mindset. But I'm really excited about this, and thanks for doing this at a different time than you're normally doing it.
No, my pleasure. And everybody, I just want to give a shout out. If you want to check out Jay's stuff, go to todayimprov.com. Todayimprov.com. He's got some great pieces, and he and I are both improvisers, and we both understand the power of yes and I know a lot of our audience, as they're coming through ending their day today on a Friday, what's the power of yes and I know we have a lot of business folks that really understand, I think at a really core level, the basic yes and I'm gonna put Jay on the hot seat, everybody.
Oh
yeah, hot seat. What are some of the life lessons that you've learned just along the way of teaching this stuff? Because I think we learn more sometimes as teachers.
Oh yeah. Well, you have more, there are more students. And so you're learning from them more than they are from you, because just by sheer numbers, right? I think my favorite thing when I'm teaching is that when people say, "Oh, this is," and a lot of times it's kind of like pulled aside of like, "Hey, these are really life lessons," and I'm like, like, because I feel that it is really a philosophy. And if you look at improv and they talk about support, yes, and being part of an ensemble, listening, I mean, those ideas really go for pretty much any religion and any philosophy. It's just put in terms that are easy for us as improvisers. We use that for stage when we first started, but now you deal with corporate a lot. I do as well. And it's funny, they will have those terms. It's sometimes with the bent of corporate of like, be here now. Well, that's staying in the moment for us, right?
Yeah.
We're going to try to avoid working in silos, right? And it's like, well, that's what we are really focused on, is the whole idea of building off of each other. And I think as companies get younger and younger, that a lot of people now have more experience with taking improv classes. Whereas before, back in the day, it was like people thought improv meant just making it up in a chaotic way. And I tell my students, what we do is not easy. It's very difficult. So when students say, we're just doing make-em-ups, it's like, no, we're not. We're not doing that, because that allows us to be mediocre, and we're not. It's something that we have I've never met a dumb improviser. And so, right, we're all very smart, and we're kind of these just misfit toys, that are fitting in together. But what we're doing is very hard, because it involves listening, it involves trust, it involves being in the moment, and we don't do any of that. In real life, it's very hard to stay in the moment. And improvisers take information, good or bad. We take information and we use that. And I think a lot of times in life, people don't want to take that information if it's bad. They don't want to go to the unknown, which is where we thrive. So I think those two things improv helps with immensely.
Yeah, no, it totally does. And welcome to people as they're filtering online. It's good to see you. J.S. Gilbert, my friend Jay, he's somebody who has a background in improv.
Nice.
He's a buddy of mine in San Francisco who has studied improv. So he's all about the yes and. He and I have chatted many times. In fact, he remembers like the commune and like
oh sure,
like way back in the day in San Francisco. Like he has stories about
like what is it? The committee? Were they there?
Excuse me. Yes, the committee. Well, I'm thinking. You know what I'm thinking? I'm thinking of that movie. I'm thinking of Mike Birbiglia's movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. No, the committee. He remembers. No, he has stories. JS has great stories about the origins of improv really in San Francisco, and he's got this amazing background. So hey, JS. He's all about it. Yeah, people don't want to say yes. That's exactly right. That's such a big part of what I'm sure, Jay, you see, and I do too. One of the biggest questions that I get is, especially in a corporate environment, is, what if it's a really shitty idea, Kathy? Do I have to yes and that? and that's the biggest
right away. It's like, I'm gonna say no to this idea right away.
Right away. Well, I think the biggest fear is just a really human one, which is, what if I don't like the idea? And I think what people need to understand is that, look, improvisers aren't stupid. Improvisers aren't yes people. They understand the difference between yes-anding to move an idea forward for exploration versus yes and we're going to do this and we're agreeing to write the check and actually do it. Yeah. And it's a different thing, but it's so funny because I think that is really one of the biggest fears that when I talk to people about yes-anding, their biggest fear is they really confuse yes and with I'm going to do this. We are going to agree to do this.
Yeah, and I think that's a really insightful point. When I think about improvising in the corporate setting, as far as like workshops, my wife and I had a company in the mid 2000s called The Riot Act, and she comes from consulting. So she was a consultant for years with KPMG, and then before it went under Bearing Point. And so she had that background. And then I brought my improv background and we formed this company together. And so she comes from that world. And for her, she says, people don't want to say yes and they don't want to answer in that world because for a couple of reasons. One is they don't want to look stupid. Yeah. And it's a big thing about protecting, which makes complete sense. Another, sometimes that's people's job is to say no, right? Like engineers and lawyers, I think, struggle a lot with improv because they're looking for problems. What she said is improv to her is not like, you're going to yes and your way to success. She's like, that's not it. She goes, for her, it's a philosophy. It's a mindset of before I say no, how can this work? Because if you look at your job and your personal life, if you say no, you're going to be, pretty soon you're going to be fired. You're going to definitely go through struggles with your relationship. So it's not a matter of the words yes and, because if somebody says, hey, Kathy, why don't we go run out into traffic right now? You go, yeah, and let's die, right? It's not that, but it's the idea of, I think it's the idea of, like you said, agreement and being open. And sometimes you go, yeah, that didn't work. But if you look throughout history, look at all the times mistakes happened, how it led to success. Look at the times where people say, all right, I'm going to say yes to this. I'm not even sure, especially in brainstorming sessions where it's like, that is the time to completely yes and even the craziest ideas, because that idea, I remember I was talking to a friend of mine and he said he was at a brainstorming session and it was like, just throw out anything. And so a guy said, they were talking about how they can improve their staff. And he goes, why don't we just kill all the other salespeople? And it was like, okay, but what they did is they yes-anded, not the murder part, but they yes-anded, you know what? That gives me an idea. What if we go after their salespeople and we offered like better packages? So the idea was, okay, I'm going to yes-and that idea of how can I make that work? And it's not like, okay, let's kill people, but it's, let me take that idea and build upon it. And for improvisers, that's what we're trained in, is like, it's not my idea, it's our idea. So it's us building this together. And sometimes people have issues with that because it's a control thing or ownership thing. And they are afraid, you know, again, it's a lot of fear. And so in the corporate world, I think things like, before I say no, let me take a moment, could this work? And at least being open to ideas so that when you come and you talk to, and we know those people in life where it's like, oh man, I'm going to talk to this person. I know they're going to say no right away. And they do. And they say no because A, it's a power move. And B, it's like, well, if I say no to you, my opinion on this will raise because I said no. And so you have to look at it like the philosophy, being open. And improv is really about being open and listening. And every human being wants to feel heard. Like that's the basic human need is I want to feel like I'm heard. And improv allows that.
Absolutely. Amen. Amen. Church of Improv. I like how you said it's like a philosophy or a religion. I'm like, it's kind of both.
For sure. We just need to get tax exempt status. That's all.
Oh my. Amen.
Right? It's no different. It's no different. It's no different.
It really isn't. No, and well said. You said so, elegantly, and it's so true. It's like we look for the reasons to say no, and I think we see that we are so wired that way as adults that our cognitive bias actually is to know. It is set to know, and it's really interesting. What happens when we actually challenge that. And I think you're right, especially in the company environment. We're so used to getting a no before somebody says, well, let's hold off. Let's explore that idea. And the thing that you said so well, which I try to impress on people is, look, you don't have to literally say yes and. Okay?
Right,
no, you don't have to be a robot.
Right.
Nobody wants a robot. You're not an improv bot. But if you just are like, all right, tell me more. Let's hear more about that idea. And okay, I'd like to know more. You seem to know about that. Help me understand. And then add on to that idea. It's the same concept. It's the same exact. So put it in your own words. Whatever you need to hear is what I tell people. But don't be so quick to find the no before we even examine what could work. Right.
And it's funny. I did a workshop for an advertising group, and we were just doing the very basic, simple, just like literally saying yes and, but this one guy kept saying yes and but, and it's like that's completely opposite to improv. But
he's trying to have his cake and eat it too.
Right.
He's trying to just get it all.
I said those words you wanted me to say. I said yes and.
Now can I say it sucks?
Now can I write? And it's like. So I think you're right. I think you're talking about the idea of the spirit of yes and, not saying those words yes and, but having that spirit behind it. And then here are the things I think as teachers, or facilitators, we go, here are some of those ideas that are wrapped up in yes and now here are some skills when you go back. I think the main thing is what the next evolution for improv is to be on retainer for companies. So it's like going, you give one shot and it's like, wow, that was great. But then if you don't have the follow through, you won't ever change that mindset. And I think that's the biggest challenge we face is like, how do we change that mindset and that behavior?
It is a behavioral thing. And you're absolutely right. I'm going to read JS's comment here. All right. Your structure creates a sense of status quo. Yeah, I think you're right. You have to break down fears of change. And no, I think that's it. And JS really knows this stuff well. JS and I are, like I say, good friends. And we had a conversation, JS and I actually, about the yes and concept being such a powerful thing, especially for things like customer service, where we are dealing with a problem. We're dealing with a customer who already, Jay, has a problem. So by the time they get to a call center or they're calling customer service, they're usually upset. Yeah. So then how can we validate that's the yes, I hear you, and how can I solve your problem? So yes and is a foundational, I think, really amazing strategy for how do we hear our customers? How do we listen? How are we looking for solving the problem? And yes and it does not have to be seen as a tactic for simply agreeing with what everything the customer says, but allowing them to feel heard, which I think is the biggest thing. The biggest complaint customers have is you're not hearing me. And then adding on to that to find a solution. And I think this is foundational stuff.
Oh, absolutely. And, hitting back again of like, I want to be heard, and improvisers know how to read people. Like that's what we do all the time. And we know how to listen to not just the words, but to how they're said. And sometimes people just want to vent and they want to be heard. And sometimes the yes and is, I'm just going to let this person vent. And it's hard because it gets very emotional and we want to
it does.
But if you could take a breath and go, okay, this isn't really about me. This isn't about me. I'm reading my audience. And we say in improv, we say, you know what, you have to improvise the scene you're in, not the one you want to be in. And so this is the scene I'm in. I had plans.
Doesn't matter.
Right? It doesn't matter.
They're gone. When
have you ever heard like, wow, that plan we had that went off without a hitch?
So great. Such a great plan.
We nailed that. It's like, no, you have to allow for that unknown. You have to allow for, at being very agile and being able to pivot. Those are signs of good leadership, but knowing who your audience is and then saying, okay, my yes and, to me also yes and is I make them look good.
Right.
And so what do I need to do to make them look good? What is that is needed in this moment? And we have a lot of fear. And what we forget a lot of times, especially when we're in a business setting, is people don't want to see you fail. People aren't going in going, I hope this is horrible, right? They want you to succeed. So they're on your side from the moment you go in. Nobody wants to sit through a very boring or terrible meeting. And I think we forget that because humans are like, your brain is fighting all the time when you improvise, because your brain is like, I want the plan. I want steps. I want to find this obligation. And as improvisers, it's obligation, inspiration are inversely related. And so when you're obligated to something, like, let's say as an improviser to the form, which is like, nobody cares about form, y'all. Nobody cares. But when you're obligated, you're less inspired. And the same thing, when you're obligated, your brain is like, I have to know, what are the steps? What are the rules? How do I go about this? My buddy, Levin O'Connor, who is co-head of the education training center at Westside, he had a great point. He's like, every student comes in and they turn to you and they go, okay, now you can tell me what the key is. Like as if I'm we were just withholding that information. It's like, no, we don't know either. We have no idea.
Yeah, it's interesting because you and I both teach, and I teach at a small little theater called Para Theater, which is nestled in Silicon Valley here. And after years and years doing improv and teaching, I so get it though, because I remember back 16 years ago starting improv, and like you have your plan, and like if things didn't go according to plan, I'm gonna crowbar my plan in there, and it's like, I got this joke. No, Kathy, no. It's really funny, and I got to drop it. And no matter what has changed, and being able to let go and just receive even the most failed screw-ups as a gift, it is such a way of, it really is a way of rewiring your brain. And Jay's 100% right, because I think back to how much in business we have, but I have a plan, Jay, but I have a plan, and my content marketing.
And it's beautiful. It's a beautiful plan.
And it's supposed to go this way. Well, guess what? Shit happens.
Right. And that's it. Right. And it's like, what a great plan. Would it have been great? Absolutely. It didn't happen. And that's you're prepared. You know, the same thing with improv. It's like, we don't just show up for shows. We are prepared, which people find, and it is a strange thing to be like, wait, you teach improv, you learn improv, you go, it's like, no, you go in and you're prepared to go in, but then you're open to anything happening. And you look at it like, a buddy of mine before a show, he'll be like, I can't wait to see where we go and who we meet. And that is such a great way to look at improv, of like, I can't wait. I can't wait for this thing. I'm with people who are brilliant. If you treat your audience and your scene partners as if they're brilliant and they're rock stars, you will enjoy playing with them, and you will do you will do so much more. But when your ego creeps in, like yours and mine, where it's like, this bit's me as a waiter's gonna be kill. It's gonna kill. And whether it does or not, most of the time it doesn't. The worst part is when sometimes they're like, oh, that killed. Yeah. That's horrible.
Exactly. To everybody listening, your joke, no, this is not stand-up comedy. This does not, you don't yeah, exactly.
Right, you don't shoehorn that in.
It's like, and you can tell, it's like you were waiting for a half an hour to drop that joke in. No. And
here it comes.
Oh, here it comes. But it's such a funny thing, and the way, Jay's so right, the way that I think about it in business, because we both work with businesses, is, and for folks that are listening that come from kind of a business mindset, is, look, you plan, and what Jay's referring to is 100% right. Improvisers, we do what we do because we're trained. We hone our craft. So we have been drilling for years. We know, we understand all the big concepts of heightening and yes-anding and follow the lever and make your partner look good. We know these things so well. And we train, we plan. But on top of that is that layer of art, which is when to drop the plan, when to ditch the script, and when to be fully in the moment to, you know what, the script doesn't work anymore. Throw that out, and whatever comes your way, how can I take what I've done, and our mutual friend Susan Messing calls it sort of, how do we just keep our shit, don't drop your shit, and integrate it with somebody else's shit, so that we have some, and that's who she is, and I love her for it. How do we integrate that? Because I think a lot of times people hear that yes and means you have to drop what you believe in, and it really doesn't mean that.
Right.
It's not about selling your soul, leaving your integrity on the table, and dropping what you do. Instead, what we mean by that as improvisers is, look, I've got this thing over here, but that may not map to what a customer needs. So is there a way to keep my integrity, my values as a company and what I believe in, but map it to what the customer needs so that both of us win? And that's the yes and that I think we're talking about, because I think sometimes in business we think that mistakenly, Jay and I were talking about this before we went live, that I hear so often, well, I don't like that idea, Kathy. Do I have to yes and a bad idea? Well, no, you don't have to do that. But can you for 1 minute explore how an integration might be a better fit if you took this and you took that and everybody wins? Yeah.
Yeah, and that's the thing of like, if I make you look good, I look twice as good.
Yes.
And if I take your idea and say, okay, how could this work? Now you're more open to bring me ideas.
Absolutely.
Because I'm not going to shoot it down right away. And I'm not going to give you these beautiful reasons why it's not going to work.
Right.
And I think the key is also, it's not what you can do. It's what do they need? And I think that's the same thing with improv scenes. It's like, whenever you're lost or confused in an improv scene, instead of thinking, what am I going to do to come in, which puts a lot of pressure on yourself. And it's rarely like a bad place. It's always, I think humans do want to help each other. Yeah. I think it's like, well, what if I just stop and I listen, what do they need? And the same thing with, and that's what my wife and I, when we did, my wife's brilliant, first off. Whenever we get in an argument,
well done.
But I believe it. And whenever we get in an argument, she'll say, treat me like your scene partner. Which is like, you're true. That's so true. But we got into that, and it was what we learned was to tell a client what you can do is not really helping their needs. And sometimes it's like, well, we can do anything, and that doesn't really help their needs either. So what our success is what are the issues you're having? What are the problems? What do you need help with? Let us help you. Like we didn't have a company that brought in like, here's a plug and play kind of thing. Here's something. It's like, we need to hear what help you need, and then we can devise a program based on that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think what you're pointing to, Jay, and it's such an important concept, is listening. I think listening, I got to tell you, is one of the hardest things. It's so huge. It's foundational. And I laugh at myself because I actually started out in stand-up, and then after about 5 years in stand-up, somebody said, you would be really good at improv. And let me tell you my journey from stand-up to improv. My head wanted to explode off my body.
Of course.
And the interesting thing was, I wasn't a person that would crowbar stuff in. My issue was I'd be in my head, set up punchline. Yeah. And you cannot do that in improv. You cannot do that in business. You have to be able to hear what somebody is saying to you about their needs and respond. And I thought I knew how to listen well. And I'm going to tell you, like, improv, like, blew the lid off that for me. And it was like, I am not listening. I need to be a better listener. And I think the same is true today in business, is that with social media, man, there's just crap coming at us all day long. And
lots.
And I own this myself, is that even though I've been attuned to listening as part of my craft, and I try to apply it in business, with all the stuff coming at us as humans and parents and business owners and social media 24/7, I think foundationally we have forgotten how to listen. And I don't know the answer. I just know that it is something that I think we all need to do a better job in, myself included.
For sure. And I think, what you're dealing with is people are being asked to do more, saying more with less, right?
Yep.
The work-life balance to me is very funny because there isn't any. It's like companies are like, work-life balance, have it. It's like, but on the same time, they're saying be available all the time.
Right.
And so you're dealing with very limited time and a lot of things you have to do. And so you have technology that interrupts that. You have, I'm worried about what's coming up. I'm regretting what happened. So you aren't in that moment. You aren't in a good mind space. So you have to battle all of those things. And it's become like with text messaging and email, it's basically a one-way conversation. So it's like, I can just shoot off this text message so I don't have to listen, or I can have that response and I can check it later. So that skill of listening is like you're saying, it's eroding right now. So we don't have that listening moment. And so we are putting so much other emphasis over that. I mean, listening should really be taught. I mean, and I think this with improv should be taught in grade school, high school. It should be, because it's such a valuable tool to use. But I don't think we listen. And part of it is when you talk to people, you're already knowing, you already assume what they're going to say. And sometimes you're right. And when you're talking to somebody like, oh, I want to connect with you, so I'm not even letting you finish what you're saying because I right away want to connect with you. I want to show you that I'm with you. So all of those things go into play where we don't have that same, we don't sit down and talk to people either. So we aren't using that skill. I'll be honest, my wife and I sometimes in bed next to each other will text each other. And I'm not kidding. Like we are next to each other.
Guilty. My husband and I have done that. Right? We're both on our I know. It's bad.
And it's very bad. But you're dealing with, like, you think so many things are more important than they are, or at least I do. Where it's like, and that goes into like feeding my ego. Where it's like, oh, let me check Facebook. Did so and so like that? Oh, I got to count. Oh, I got to be angry about this thing. Oh, I can't believe I'll be outraged about this. And we've gotten away from, I think, having human interaction where you're listening can go so much farther in a relationship, especially a business relationship, because you go into a place and you think, I can multitask, but subconsciously, when people see you and you're on your phone or you're doing something else, and even in class, for me, it's like, put the phone down. And even if you're taking notes on the phone, bring a pad and paper, or just try to stay present as long as you can here, because it's going to have so much more meaning for you, and you're going to practice that skill so much more. But right now we don't have that. It's something that we need to come up, and we need to bring it up again. And it's listening, not just with the ears and the words, but listening to what are they really saying? When my wife says to me, or I say like, I got to go be by myself. It's like, am I saying that? Am I saying like, I really want you to come after me? Like, what is the truth behind what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And so it's not just listening to the words, but it's also listening to what the overall message is. Right.
It's so true. I mean, I'm trying to make a daily practice of really listening. And it's so funny. Here's how hard it is. I so agree with you that I was on the phone with a client yesterday, and I was really practicing listening. I closed my laptop. But we're on phone. So she can't see my body language, Jay, right? Yeah. And I'm talking to her, and all of a sudden I get really quiet, and there's a little bit of silence. This is how uncomfortable we are with silence.
Yes.
We're not practicing it. All of a sudden she goes, "Are you there?"
Yes.
And I said, "Yeah, I'm totally taking in everything you're saying. I'm really listening." And she was like, she laughed and she goes, "I don't even know what to say." She goes, "I'm so used to people cutting me off or yes budding me or having a better idea or telling me, not really listening." And she said, "Your just pauses and your pregnant pauses and your silence and your listening threw me because I'm not used to it." And I thought, oh my God, how we've become so acclimated to just not listening that we don't know what to do with the opposite.
And like you said, we're afraid of silence.
Yeah.
And it's also, if you look, there's a cultural difference as well, because for some countries, the silence is so important because it shows you're listening and taking in. And when you're in a business setting, a lot of times people will talk over that silent person when like really they're the one that has the insight. It's almost always the case because they're spending their whole time listening and they're not talking. And, you know, we see it on stage when you just pause in a scene for silence. It's very, very powerful. And it allows you to sit and listen and gather yourself and really take it in. It's funny. You say like people go, are you there? Because it happens all the time where it's like, because also most of the time it's like, nope, we lost her. Okay. On this conference call, nope, she's gone. And then it's like, hi guys, sorry, I'm back. And so, you know, it's that expectation of, well, I got to fill this silence. Yeah. And it's like, no, a lot of times you don't. You don't have.
You don't. I mean, some of the strongest scenes I've ever done, you know, kind of going back to improv and applying it to business, some of the strongest scenes I can ever remember doing were just pregnant pause, just silent tension. Silent, every improviser knows silent tension until you know who you are to each other and how you don't have to come out and just like show up and throw up. You can just take that moment. And some beautiful things come out of that because then you notice the person's body language. Then you notice their demeanor. Then you pick up on whatever you need to do to advance the scene. And it's okay. And I think we just need to get more comfortable with these mindful kind of pauses and just really listening. And it's something I know it's hard to practice. And I'm really trying, you know, myself that when I'm fully present, even on the phone, that I don't have anything in front of me, which is hard to do, to take notes. Yeah. But it's distracting. And I'm finding that the quality of my conversations, it's a little jarring but for somebody at first. But I think what's phenomenally interesting is just the way that they react when they find out that I'm really listening.
Yeah, nobody's going to be like, oh.
How dare you?
What? You know what Kathy does?
She listens, goddammit.
To every word I say. Ugh. I can't. How annoying. God, why doesn't she interrupt me? It's like, no, you're making that person again feel valued. And I think we spend so much time beating ourselves up. Yeah. You know, when people come in class or in a business setting and we say, when you talk yes and, you know, who's it harder for you to yes and, somebody else or yourself? And it's like, oh, myself, it's harder. And it's like, well, yeah, because you think about yourself the whole time and you criticize yourself the whole time. And so when people come in and they say, how do I get out of my head? It's like, well, bad news, you can't. But here are some ways that would help you. And one is you get into your scene partner's head. You get into their heart. You get into your heart. Like and that's the battle of your ego, which I think is more brain, and your soul, which is the emotional part. And if you look at business, you've been in situations like I have where you can't say, how does that feel? You have to say, what was that like? What are your takeaways? So you can't even acknowledge feelings. And that's, that's the biggest part of a human being, but we don't find value in it. So we push that to the side and we have to talk about what was your experience. Yeah. Say some adjectives instead of like, how did you feel? Like, and enforcing that's a value, and there are no good or bad feelings. It's just, what was that like? How did that make you feel? But we're so, especially in the corporate arena, it's a lot of times it's like, can't say that.
Can't say that. No, it's also, it's like, are you Dr. Filling my ass?
Right.
What are you doing? What are you doing? Yeah, it's
like, Dr. Filling my ass.
Like you just, no, it's like, try talking. Yeah, totally. No, I'm so laughing because it's like, I've been in situations where I'm dealing with like data scientists or whatever I'm dealing with. And that's not the audience to like talk about feelings. They're like, but it's funny because you're right. You have to sort of triangulate around it, but it's such an important thing to be able to acknowledge. But we have to just find a way to sort of just pause and let that kind of moment seep in, and and hear people.
And it has to be a safe place. And that's another thing is like, it's not always, it's not always a safe environment in general, and for various reasons. But a lot of times you don't feel like you have that safety to make those suggestions or to fail, and I think companies like, who is it? Google, that's like, you can spend 1 day a week, or you can spend 25% of your time doing your thing and failing. Yes. And what you realize is that failure will lead to something better. But if you don't embrace failure and you penalize failure, especially in a place where you're brainstorming or new. Once you do that, then you're limiting what you can do. And so it becomes a matter of just protecting yourself.
Right.
And you can't evolve or grow with that.
Yeah. If only, God, if there was just one wish, if I had a magic wand, Jay, well, there's a lot of wishes I would have. But if I only had one, it's like, I'm so with you. If we could just get rid of this idea of failure, I think that is the one thing in companies that I see over and over that really keeps people holding back. And, I'll ask them about it, and their perception, what's really interesting is that the company may or maybe not be harshly handling failure, but the perception that it is, and that there's a backsplash to failing on an idea is so real that even when executives tell you, well, no, Kathy, gosh, we really are open. We really want it. Something in the way that they're communicating with employees says otherwise. Employees are feeling like, no. Here's the reality. Here's what you say. And there's a huge gap. So executives need to do more to make it a safe space. I think to your point, to really, because we're saying, gosh, don't worry about failure, but it's very hard for that employee out there to go on a limb and just with the mug and the t-shirt, and, be assured that it's all going to be good. And it seems like while we're saying that message on one hand, it seems like employees don't feel that they're getting enough legitimate, honest communications that back that up.
Well, they're going to have to change because the millennials and the younger folks entering the workplace are not looking for a lifelong career at one company, right? Which in the day was like, I got a job at IBM. I am set. Like this, I'm going to be right. And that was the mindset. Now millennials are like, you know what? That's not as important to me. What's important to me is like, I want to have my creativity. I want to go to a place that I'm valued. Like they are more fluid in their careers. And so either you have to adapt to that, or you will start seeing that your workforce will decline, your product will decline, because you're losing these people who are saying to you, and you're not listening. They're saying, we don't care about that. We don't care just about salary. We want other things, and we want to be able to have a better quality of life, and we do want a work-life balance. And if you don't listen, and again, listening to that, it's like, listen to what your client is saying. Listen to what your people are saying. If you could stop for a moment and say, I really want to hear what's being said. Second City is having this, it's called a listening circle. And what they're basically doing is they are putting, do you know what these are?
No, tell me, share with us.
So they're putting their executives like, I haven't done this before, but we're doing it next week. They're putting like the administration, like the executive, I believe the owner, in chairs, and they just have to sit and listen to people talking to them. They can't argue, they can't counter. They just are sitting and listening to this, so they can't even say anything, which I think is a really great idea. I think the idea should also be making these anonymous statements, so then I don't feel like, well, I know it's this listening circle and I know they're accepting of this, but like really, let's be honest, there is going to be something that comes of this because they know I'm the one who said it. So I think it's a big step for a company to do that. Now, if anything changes, not sure, but to know that and to be like, oh, okay, so they don't get a chance to say anything back. At least I know that they're going to have the appearance of listening. I think they will listen, but I think that is we circle back to listening. I think you're right on. I think it's always the biggest skill is listening and vulnerability. Those are the two biggest things for me in improv, are those two. And it keeps circling back. You keep hearing in our conversation here, it's always going back to how can we be better listeners? How do we listen? How do we listen to, how do we listen to reply? Not just like I'm waiting for you to stop talking. It's like I am listening in response to you. My statement will be in response, not as soon as you're done talking or I'm going to interrupt you. It's that listening and being, we say others focused, right? You're focused on others instead of focused inward, which will also help you get out of your head. But when you're not in those moments and you're not open to listening, you're going to miss a lot of the magic. And that's what improvisers we do is we look for those mistakes. Those become part of our pattern. You know, it's like jazz, play the wrong note again.
Oh.
Now you have your song instead of like correcting it. Like I really get irritated when somebody is seeing correct somebody else.
Oh.
Where they're like, it's not pronounced spatula, it's pronounced spatula. It's like, no, let's pronounce it spatula. Let's enjoy that happy accident. And now let's pronounce other things wrong in this world. Now, because instead,
let's heighten.
It's heightened. Let's heighten it.
Let's heighten
instead of like, it's like, oh, I guess I did the wrong scene. I guess I got that question on the test of improv wrong. It's like, no, let's listen and heighten that.
Yeah. Yeah, it really is a beautiful gift. I love that you say that, because some of the best scenes, and I think actually, you know, in the same is true of the business world, some of the best things I've ever invented or innovated or collaborated with people on have come out of just these crazy notions. And, you know, the craziest things, like, it's a gift when somebody... when you can see the world as a gift, if somebody in a scene completely botches the name that you've already established, and by the way, everybody who's listening, this happens all the time in improv. I thought your name was, you know, Brunhilde. No, I was Bob, but now I'm Brunhilde Bob.
Because we didn't listen. Right.
And you know what? I'm really sensitive about you calling me by my middle name, Brunhilde Bob. And you know what? And then it becomes a thing, and like you just and the crap out of that.
Yes.
The best scenes I've ever had, and the same is true of just the corporate world. Great. You take your idea, let's figure out how to integrate it and mash it up with what I've got, and let's figure out where this goes. Those are the best things possible. And when you can realize that a mistake is really not, it's a gift, it's an opportunity. I think that's when, for me personally, when you realize you kind of turn that corner about what understanding what collaboration really is about.
For sure.
And that's when you know you've kind of turned that corner, because it's a very different mindset from you know, stand-up. But what a gift. I mean, the best stuff happens when people just say the craziest stuff, right?
And then go, my buddy says before a show, he'll be like, if you get weird, I'll get weirder. Now, how cool is that to be like, that to me has got your back? And that's a big thing we say. And I see it, like it's said, I think pretty much before every improv show, improvisers say, got your back. But I would say, I would dare say 50% of the time we don't mean it. Because we get on stage, somebody has an idea and we deny them or we shoot them down. And that is not got your back. Got your back is, what's your idea? How can I make it better? And how can we build this thing together, rather than me, like what used to happen with stand-ups is stand-ups and improvisers and actors all kind of hated each other, because actors were like, you don't prepare, and stand-ups are like, wait, you don't try to be funny, and improvisers are like, well, it's not about the jokes,
right?
And we don't need props. We have objects. We can do, my coffee cup. Space object work. But what I'm seeing now is I'm seeing a lot of crossover. I'm seeing a lot of stand-ups use improv, and I'm seeing a lot of improvisers. I tell improvisers, man, a lot of times you should take a stand-up class, because you will know how to be on a stage. You will know how to work with an audience. And improvisers, a lot of times, they just don't know how to do that, because a lot of times it's like, I'm going to take this class, and then they go, I really love doing it, but they don't have the training of what it's like to be on a stage, what it's like to have that presence and to command the audience and to lead them where you think is fun and good and funny, rather than letting them lead you. Because when we hear a laugh and then we're like, ooh, that's where the show is, it's like, no, not all the time. It's not always the laugh that is like, sometimes the laugh is, hey, Kathy, I'm here. Come see my show, is the laugh, right? Sometimes it's like you have to learn how to lead them rather than them leading you. And so it's good to see how improv is kind of filtered in, not just in like the performance areas, but also in the business, where, because there have been things like Whose Line Is It Anyway? Because there have been things like these books that have been written using improv. Now there's a legitimacy to it. Now at least there's a reference to what improv is. Now it's gone from, we're going to bring improv in for a company party, to, no, we're going to design learning sessions using the tools of improvisation to help you get better at what you do. And if you told me when I started 25 years ago, I would be doing I would be traveling the world and traveling throughout the states, teaching improv to business executives and interns and new hires and managers. I would say, like, why? No way. They would. Are you kidding me? Nobody knows what improv is. But now it's like, it is so powerful, and you see it transform people, and you see people's eyes light up when they're like, oh, I get what this is. And you see it when people use it and they allow themselves to follow that fear of, like, I've never done this before. I'm really afraid, but I'm going to do it. And they come out the other side, and it's always, you survive. Sometimes it's an amazing thing. Sometimes it's like, oh man, I did it. Okay, I lived through this. But it's always following that fear kind of sets you free.
So well said. I mean, you know, having done improv for 16 years, it's such a part of my DNA now. But I remember when I had been in improv for a couple of years and then went back to stand-up, and it made my stand-up better because my audience work, like just crowd work, like when you just forget the script, forget your set list, just have a conversation with the crowd. The best comedy comes from that. It made my speaking better, everything. And I think what you're saying, Jay, you know, resonates with me, because I think there was a time 15 years ago, there was concentric circles. You know, you thought of improv as the company team building party. Well, we'll have beer, and then that's what improv was. And now to see, fast forward all these years later, that improv is teaching people in you know, customer service. It's teaching people in management to let go. It's teaching people empathy. It's teaching people, and, you know, Jay and I talked a little bit about this before the show started, things like unconscious bias, and how can we be more sensitive and attuned to the biases we have. It is becoming so applicable in so many things across the board in business that it's really about human skills. It's really human skills is what we're talking about. And I think it's foundational. It's no longer what you know, if I talk to a boomer executive, they're kind of like, meh. But you talk to a millennial executive and they're like, yeah, we're going to do improv training.
For sure.
Because we understand that this is the kind of workplace that our people want to work in.
Yes, for sure.
And they're not going to put up with, you know, this sort of command and control brand anymore. They want a human workplace that validates them and makes them feel like they matter. And it's just, you know, fast forward 15 years, it's night and day about the way people look at improv and as being really a foundational skill. And I think it's wonderful. We've come a long way.
Yeah, you've come a long way. And you said it, like, you know, the whole thing about team building, like that has such a stigma to it. And when you say like improv team building, it really undercuts what we do. It is really talking about it could be communication styles. It could be branding. It could be, now a big thing is storytelling. What is the story of, what is your story? What is the company's story? Storytelling has become such a big thing now, and it uses a lot of improv tenets in storytelling, but that's another, you know, you're looking for the personal connection, and that's what improvisers do so well, is like that personal connection. Because once you have that, it breaks down a lot of things. So now you're associating a person, you're associating a feeling, a relationship. And that's, I think, what sales are driven by, are feelings. Whether it's, you make me feel more powerful, whether it's, wow, you make me feel valued, whether it's, I just like talking to this person, right? I think it's all about that human connection and feeling. And I think improv is the absolute perfect way to learn that, and the perfect way to use that are learning these skills. You know, one of the best advice I got as a teacher is over prepare and throw it out the window when you get into the class to teach to what the class is. And I use that all the time. I'll over prepare, but then I'll improvise. So it's not just like, I'm just going to show up and whatever. It's like, no, I prepare going into it, but then when I'm there, I'm teaching to the class I'm in, not the class I want it to be.
Yeah. So well said. It's really that mix, that alchemy of preparation and throwing out that script when it no longer works. And that's the best description I have for what improv is. And the only reason we can do this kind of stuff, I always like to remind people, is that we're not winging it. We are people that have been preparing for years and years and years to hone our craft, so that when we meet that opportunity that where the plan doesn't work, we go, okay, and we're not worried about it. we're not worried about it. What's one big thing? Because I could talk to you all day long, and I'm sure you got other things to do. But I so love chatting with you, Jay. What's one big thing you would want to leave with the audience? Because we've got a lot of fans, Jerry and JS, and some people that are saying hi because some of them have experienced improv and they love improv.
Yeah.
What would you leave people with?
Leave them as far as a feeling when they're leaving the show, or
just one word of wisdom if they were looking at so maybe for the people who might watch this later and don't know a lot about improv, what's one thing that you'd like to plan about improv with them?
Wow, that's a great question.
That's deep, I know, for Friday. It's like,
Kathy, it's a Friday deep. That's your Friday deep question. Friday deep question.
Friday deep question.
My one thing, like I say to students, is, I say love each other. Like that's a big part of it, is like have empathy for each other. Like I think we forget a lot of times to have that empathy for each other. I think too, it's like focus on other people besides yourself.
Yes.
Like, and we talk, I mean, the word of our discussion right now is listening. So I think, all of those are kind of like my philosophy. And if you're talking like just stage, I say fun. Where's the fun in your performance? Like most of the time you're not paid. Very few of us get paid to do it. And so you have to go out there and you have to be in the situation where you're having fun. And as I'm talking, I'm thinking I guess the biggest thing is like, failure and following the fear. Like those are the two big things, is like allow yourself to fail, fail with a smile, you'll get through it. And then follow whatever that fear is, get out of your comfort zone. And for some people it's, I'm going to sign up for an improv class. They don't even necessarily take it, but it's like, I'm going to do that. But do something that will help you grow. But yeah, follow whatever that fear is, because that's what's going to set you free. So I know you asked for one.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it. Oh, it's okay to have multiple. It's okay. It's a multiple choice question.
Multiple choice, right? It's multiple.
Right. And I laugh because I so love that. We forget sometimes, the thing that I as I've started teaching, improv over the years, becoming from student to teaching folks new to improv, is especially cerebral people. And I love what you just said, because in Silicon Valley, we've got a lot of people that are really deeply cerebral, a lot of left brain engineers, and rules freak people out. Like, oh God, I got to do this. And so I love what you just said about fun, because it's like, look, you said it so well, be good to each other, make each other look good. Just make each other look good.
Yeah.
That's it. Make each other look good. Don't be an a-hole.
Right.
That's really important. Don't try to be the guy or the gal that crowbars in the joke, or steps on somebody, or blocks somebody, or denies. Somebody made you an offer and just they're saying, oh my God, I'm so proud of you, son, because you just learned to tie your shoe, and you're the one that crowbars the joke in. It's like, well, no big deal. It's Velcro, Mom. Don't be the guy or gal that's doing that. And just really listen and support each other. It's really very simple. And I always tell my students, if they get really hung up on everything, just throw that out. Are you having fun? Are you getting somebody's back? And are you listening and emotionally reacting? If you don't know what to do, just what's your inclination? What's your emotional reaction? And the rest of the rules will come. Because I know for people that are deeply cerebral, the rules can be really daunting. So I love what you said about having fun. Have fun.
Have fun. And we humans love to complicate things.
We do.
Simple isn't good enough. And so I remind myself, I don't know if you could see it. So
when you got there,
yes, it's a yes and tattoo.
I love it.
So that's my yes and tattoo. And I tell students, I'm like, everything you need, like all the stuff you're thinking, status, subtext, character, all that stuff. If you say yes and you play to the height of your intelligence, and you play always, all that stuff will happen. And at the end of the show or the scene or the class, you'll be like, oh my gosh, I did it, rather than thinking, here's what I have to do and going into it. But if you just say yes and, to what the idea is, all that other stuff will happen. You know, I have people come in and they go, oh, this is just like doing bits with my friends. I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. You're just doing bits with your friends. And so I have that tattoo, and I got that because I wanted to name our 2-year-old daughter Yesandra. And my wife would not, I'm not kidding. I go middle name. My wife would not let it happen. So I negotiated. I said, okay. Because she's like, yes, and isn't a name. Yesandra is not a name. I go, Laura, at one point, Laura wasn't a name either. And she goes, nope. And so I ended up getting this. She wrote on my arm with Sharpie. Then I had them tattoo over that. So it's her writing. And then our daughter's middle name is Day, which is a takeoff of the Russian Die, which is yes, and. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. But we complicated a bunch, and you go through classes, right? And it's like, now you got these rules, and now it's like, don't ask questions, don't, especially when it's like a don't. Now it's like saying, don't think purple elephant. It's like, that's all I think about. So instead,
that's all you think about.
As teachers, it's like, well, what are we really trying to say? What we're trying to say is provide information, right? So I think if you put it in those terms, so if you change it from a don't do to a do, now it gives the brain a task. So it's like, oh, okay, I can do this thing. So I think a lot of times teachers complicate it as well. So it's like, just go back to the basics. Go back to like, and that's most of my notes in class or rehearsals. I'm like, say yes, like all the time. Somebody will be like, you want something to drink? No. And I'm like, what's the answer? So it's like the simplest thing of like, just say yes and. Yeah, I want it, and I want some green tea. Like, it will open up what you can do. So I think in general, it's like, have that philosophy. Be open to what's coming your way. Look at things in a positive light instead of a negative light. And when you find something doesn't work for you, don't be afraid to leave and go, I'm yes Andy myself. There's a great book called Year of Yes. Shonda Rhimes, who does she just signed a huge deal with Netflix.
On TV. That's great.
On TV. You wrote a book, and it was her sister at Thanksgiving was like, you know, asked her something. She said no. And her sister's like, she goes, you always say no. And she's like, what? She goes, you never say yes. And so she spent a year saying yes, and she lost weight. She gave her commencement speech at her alma mater. And it's all because she said yes to herself and yes to opportunity. So sometimes yes is, oh, I have to leave this toxic relationship that I'm comfortable with. Yeah. But if you say yes to yourself, good things will always happen. We're scared a lot of times. As performers, it's like, I got to stay on this team because I won't be able to play again. It's like, no, you will, but you have to say yes, and you have to follow that fear. And then once you're able to do that, a lot of good stuff starts happening in your life. So say yes.
Amen, Jay. Say yes. It's so true. I mean, all I can say is yes and to that, because good things will happen. Find the reason to say yes. Yeah. And don't overcomplicate it. I think the same is true in business. It doesn't mean you have to do it. You have to build that thing. Just what would happen if you said what if or yes and to somebody's idea in business, in your department? What good, amazing things could happen just because you allowed for the possibility of exploration? And in stand-up comedy, we call it fondle the fear, which is, I think in today's environment, everyone's like, oh, but it's meant very comically. But follow the fear, go into the cave, really embrace that fear. And I think, Jay, you said it so well. Forget the rules. Just really have fun. Be playful. Be playful and be there for people. And I think if you make your partner look good, honestly, it's going to come back to you. It's going to come back to you.
You know who cares about forms? Improvisers. You know who doesn't give a shit? The audience.
Exactly.
They want to watch you create magic. They don't want it. They don't care about a complicated form. And that's what improvisers do, because we're smart. So we want to do something creative and original. It's like, worry less about that. Worry about your two-person scene. That's the foundation for improv. So get really good at those.
It's true. It's true. We as improvisers, it's comical because we're like, after a show, we'll sort of like high five each other. And then we're like, well, you know what? In that Armando, you did this. And it's like, does it matter? The audience is going, this is fun. They don't even know what it's called. They don't care. They just want to laugh. They don't care. And so all the things that we so worry about, the audience is going, that was fun.
They're amazed you're up there. They are like scared to death. Most of them are like, don't put me up there. So they're first off amazed. They come to an improv show to enjoy themselves and laugh. They don't come, again, they don't come to a show like it's going to be terrible. So already they're on your side. They come up there. And of all the shows you're going to do, that's one of them. That's true. And to sit there and think about what you should have done is only useful if you're using improv to write sketch comedy. So then you go, let's break apart that scene. What worked? Let's re-improvise it. But for most of the people in the world who improvise, let it go. You shouldn't have done anything different. You shouldn't have made a different. You did what you did, and you got to embrace that what you do is good enough. I did what I did, and what that was good enough. And once you let go of that having to control or having to be right or perfect, it becomes a lot easier once you're just like, this is just going to be another show. I'm going to have as much fun as I can. It's not going to be good or bad. It's just going to be a show.
Yeah. And it gets easier. It's true. When you sort of work that muscle, letting go of like, oh, it wasn't perfect, but that's okay. It was what it was. It is a muscle that will serve you in everything. Yes. It really will.
And nothing's going to be perfect. There's no perfect scene. I've been trying for 25 years. Humans have been trying forever. There's no perfect scene. So give up trying to do it. No,
in fact, the most fun scenes, as I've said, really have been for me. I look back on it where, we screwed up and somebody misheard something, but the mishearing was 10 times funnier than anyone would have anticipated. And we just saw a yes and jumped on it. And I'll leave the audience with this. And Jay, I know you'll have your own story. So I was in a scene last year with a friend, and he came in as the dad. I came in thinking that I was going to be the sophisticated lady with I've got my little martini glass, and all of a sudden
great object work,
doing my space object work. And all of a sudden, the opening line is in a show is so how was kindergarten? And I've got a martini glass. So you know what? You yes and the crap out of that, and I became a kindergarten mob boss, and I was running a mafia ring out of kindergarten. So there's always a way to take whatever and get on the same page. And if you just yes and laugh at it, the audience is relishing in your mistake and the fact that you found a way to just come together, and it is the most fun for the audience, and that's when I've had the most fun, actually.
Yeah, and I think, talking about that taking and going with it, and I love that you're like, yes, and the crap out of it, because I'm like, yes, aggressive yes, and just yes. Before you know what you're agreeing to, just say yes. I see the two words that make me, the three words in improv that make me cringe the most. One is no.
Yeah.
2 is weird, and 3 is creepy, because that just means you're not justifying the situation. You're taking a lazy way out to turn to the audience and be like, now you're declaring it's weird for everyone, instead of, if you support that person, if you look at your scenes, every moment in your scene is like, this is supposed to happen. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. This thing right now, it's what's supposed to happen. Then nothing gets weird. Then we can make these moves. And it's like, what a cool thing to have a kindergarten mob boss on the side. Like right now, I'm like, let's play it. Like I'm ready, because I'm like, and then I'm thinking less. I don't want to think. So I want to be like, if I'm focused on what you're doing, I can call your stuff back. I can support that. Now I'm not having to have the pressure of coming up with something, right?
Totally. It's so true. And I think, I'll say that it applies to business too. Like, Susan Messing always says, and you'll appreciate this as you know her, it's just celebrate and elevate the crazy. So what would happen if we normalized crazy rather than going, oh, that's a bad idea. That's weird. That's just exactly what you're saying. But what if in a business, we actually said, when somebody had this radical idea, we said, you're onto something. Let's all do what Joe's doing. Joe is licking the walls. And damn it, Joe brought in $10 million last year. So whatever Joe's doing, we're all going to lick the walls now. And that is brilliant. And we're all going to do it. Yeah. And what if we just did that for a moment? Like how much amazing support and discovery could we have if we just not just normalized it, but celebrated and elevated the crazy or the things that normally you go, why are you doing that? What are you doing? But
and it's like, I don't know why. I don't know why I'm doing this. I just am doing this thing. Please don't penalize me for it.
Do it, but it's my character, and that's my point of view, and it's my lens in the world, and that's my thing.
Yeah. So, yeah. And then it's like, what else is true? And if in a business setting too, what you can do is say, okay, we're going to set a clock, 10 minutes. And then at the end of the 10 minutes, what we'll do is, because yes and is really deferred judgment, right?
Yeah.
So you go, okay, especially in a brainstorming situation or a meeting, whatever, it's like, at the end of the 10 minutes, we can go back to what we think is important. But in those 10 minutes, let's just make it a place that's safe. And let's make it a place where, like, I've dealt with clients and taught them simple improv warm-ups that they use now, years later, at the start of their meetings, because it gets them in a good headspace. It gets them in a space away. And the same thing with warm-ups for class. It's like, I like to warm up really fast, like doing really fast, silly, fun stuff, because it gets me out of the week I've had and into a place of play. So if you can set the tone and set the stage of, like, we're going to make this a safe space, a place we can fail, a creative space. And at the end of this 10 minutes, then we can go back to what this agenda is, or we can use this moving forward. Now you've slightly started to change the culture and the mindset. And it's a gradual shift, but I think it's starting to become more and more normal in companies, which is, to me, it's like, yes, like, oh, you've seen the light. Now keep it there. Don't move. Keep headed that way. Follow that fear.
We're getting there. We're getting there. Jay, will you come back and chat with us? Will you come back?
Anytime. I'm not kidding. Anytime.
And maybe next time you come back, let's just do some live yes anding. Let's just do some fun stuff, and like the audience can kind of experience it, because it's always fun to talk to another improviser, because you and I know what the other's talking about. But for folks that maybe haven't seen it, what that could be and how that might advance brainstorming, I think that might be kind of fun.
And it'd be good too, because then it's like, okay, you and I can discuss how to promote this. So then we can reach a really wide audience of people who, like you said, they might not understand what it is, or maybe they have a touching knowledge of it, or maybe they might be, experienced. But I think, having the more people that can come in would be great too.
Be awesome. Yeah. We do this a little bit at not the regular time, but for not having the regular time. And it's Friday. I thank everybody for dropping by and the comments and everything. So thank you. You can find out more about Jay at todayimprov.com. Please do check out his website. He is wonderful. And I enjoy his writing, and I know I really appreciate the way that he writes with such, passion. And as somebody who has been performing since the Paleolithic era and teaches, I really love his commitment to his craft, and I think you'll love it too. And you can catch me at keepingithuman.com, and also my book, Stop Boring Me, is on Amazon. So until next time.
And you're great. Like, don't sign off yet, Kathy, because you're fantastic too. And every time you post something, it's very interesting to me, and I love sharing what you have, because you have such a love of improv and such an integrity about it. So I think what you're doing, like these sessions, I was really excited to come on with you, and I think, I mean it. Like, I think you're really at the forefront. No, I shan't. But you're really bringing the message into a place as far as like the corporate world, and it's really great to see.
Well, and I'm appreciative of you, and I thank you for saying that. I think the one thing that I really, really feel passionate about, and I know you do as well, is that look, Jay and I believe in this stuff, or we wouldn't be doing it. Yeah. I've seen the transformation in my life in over 16 years. And just when you help people and you see the light bulb go on, and just even something as small as yes, and if they're using it in their business and in their personal relationships or their work relationships, the dynamics all of a sudden change, and they come back to you and they're like, oh my God, I yes-anded my spouse or my partner. And like the light bulb goes on about how it could be, and how it could be different. And to see that kind of change in the world, I think is pretty phenomenal. And if we can sort of bring more of that to business, I think that is just a great, gosh, wouldn't the world would be better? Wouldn't it be better?
I tell people, if everybody took one improv class, the world would be better.
I know.
And what people don't realize is once they start taking classes, they start realizing how many times they say no. It just becomes an instinct. And like one of my favorite students, and I have, all students I love, but one of my favorites, Eileen Kahana, she runs a company called Room to Improv, and she took my class. And after this was like the second term of improv class, fairly new, she said, afterwards I say, what are you taking each class? I'm like, what are you taking from this class? And she's like, I wanted to punch you in the nose. And I said, what? And she was like a retired public school teacher and a wonderful person. But she goes, I realized like you wanted me to say yes, and I didn't want to do that. And she goes, now I realize the importance of it. And she said, and I don't remember saying this, but it's true. She said, first week of class, I said, I won't stop scenes. but then I kept stopping her scenes because she kept saying no right out of the gate. But now she runs a company called Room to Improv, which uses improv to help with veterans assimilate back into society, to help seniors, and also to help combat bullying in the Chicago public schools. So she's really become a converted evangelist for improv, and she really understands it as well. But she came from a place of like, I didn't know how much I said no until I started this. And so now it's like it allows her to play better with like grandchildren, and her life has just become so much more enriched, and she's a wonderful person. So yeah, that transformation in people is so powerful.
It really is. I didn't know how much I said no, and it changed so much in my world. And again, don't feel bad, everybody. If you're listening to this, we have the human condition is we have this setting, this cognitive bias towards no, and we all do it. And I think yes and will rewire your brain.
Yeah.
And because of that, it will open up creativity, communication, relationships in a way, and Jay gets it. He knows, in a way that just opens up so many more possibilities. You will be amazed at the energy and how people receive you simply because they feel heard.
Right.
And it will change. You will be like, what did I do differently? You yes-anded people. You saw and heard people. And it's that simple to make a big change in the world. So amen.
Right on. Well said.
Improv revolution. Jay, thank you so much. And we'll have you back again. And everybody do visit Today Improv. And also, if you get a chance, keepingithuman.com. And we'll see you next time.
Thank you, Kathy. You're awesome.
You too. Back at you. Bye.